As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission, I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain, keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH-LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
We're going to be joined shortly by Johnny Eric Williams, and Johnny's the chair of the sociology department at Trinity College here in Connecticut. It's located just in the Hartford area, and really appreciate his availability to kind of share some of his thoughts and perspectives on not only what's going on in the Middle East as we speak, but just regarding the sociology profession, teaching, being in the college environment during these contentious days. And it's going to be very insightful and informative to hear his comments. Johnny's been on the staff at Trinity for a number of years, and as I say, is chair of the sociology department. And even just teaching the subject of sociology, that's somewhat of an experiment, the creation of sociology and the invention of it. So let's hear from Johnny. I'm going to admit him to the room now. Johnny, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good,
Thank you.
Good to hear you. We're ready.
Yeah.
We're
How
ready
you doing?
We're ready to go. You and I are both AARP eligible, and so
yeah, we are. We are both
time.
AARP. Let me turn this off, this phone off, so I won't be interrupting you. Okay.
So let's dive right in for the next 40 or 50 minutes or so.
Glitching anything? I'm moving slowly.
Say that again.
Am I glitching anything? I'm moving slowly. Anything like that?
No, you're looking good. You're looking good.
Okay.
Looking good. I checked with your wife and your daughters and your family members, and they said that you're still one whole being. You know, this about the hologram. You're resting the hologram today, so I got the real deal.
Yeah, you got the real deal. That's true. That's true. So let me put this up here for you. But yeah, so I've been making it around. So I'm sort of tired though, but I'm still around. I'm still doing my stuff.
We got what miles to go before we sleep, right?
Exactly. How you doing though, man? Like, I haven't talked to you in a long time.
Indeed. We're recording for this show, so I mean, I appreciate your giving me the chance to share with folks. I'll be 75 this coming January.
Yeah.
It's coming July rather, and I don't say that to boast, but I say that I've had some wear and tear, but I'm still on the road. So I think that's the key thing, whether you're just being born in one of the hospitals or whether you're a premature baby that just been rescued in Gaza. This life journey can be somewhat hazardous, but personally speaking, my testimony, I have a pretty favorable testimony and a blessed testimony for that standpoint. Yeah, I mean, and lastly, and I appreciate your saying for public disclosure, I share with people that if you were calling me or if I was calling you, and if I was in a hospice right now, I would say all is well, because again, nothing's not permanency is not necessarily in the cards, depending on your definition of death and dying. So I appreciate you giving me a chance to testify.
Well, life can switch off at the moment at any moment. So
yes.
Just enjoy it to the fullest every day. So that's
right.
What I try to do and try to bear witness, but also to try to transform the society so it'll be a better place when I leave.
And that's why I'm so glad you have a chance to kind of chat this today. And I was just spontaneously yesterday, it just crossed my mind that I'd say I got to speak to Johnny and share with the world some of his thoughts in terms of not only just the Middle East, but this sociology experiment that you've been involved with for several decades. I don't mean to be denigrating when I say experiment, but the whole invention of that discipline was somewhat of an experiment of can we organize or observe organizations and social organizations, and can we improve the input and the output of the organization? So let's jump in if we want it in terms of the Middle East, or we could just talk about sociology in general, however the spirit is moving you.
I mean, it's like what exactly do you want me
Well,
to
I'm
talk about in
curious.
terms of the Middle East?
Yeah, I'm curious of your. It's on everybody's mind, and particularly, I think even if there was a cessation and peace agreement, this moment, the damage that's been done thus far, and where we go for the future. My thoughts are, if you're 10, 15, 20, you still might be hearing about Gaza in the news into your 30s or your 40s or even your 50s. So what does this mean? This historical moment is not a world war per se, but in some ways it's tantamount to a world war that we all, with social media and communication, we're all aware of what's going on to some degree. And given sociology, and given you went to Brandeis, and given some, I've seen some of your comments, and just given the if the use the word controversy, but just the various points of view about what's happened, and then after, even if we have an agreement this particular moment, what's going to happen in the future. So it just dawns on me that you've been, prior to October 7th, you've been involved with this and aware in seminars and workshops and writings about peace on earth, goodwill toward men in general, but also particularly to the Middle East. So I know you have a sincere and deep abiding interest in that area.
Yeah, well, I have friends in both in what is the state of Israel, and then also Palestine. Um, you know, since I arrived in the Northeast, and I came to the Northeast in 1984 from the South to attend school at Brandeis University. So um, it was there that I was made aware of a connection that was going on between the state of Israel and South Africa. And at that
Mm-hmm.
time, it was apartheid in South Africa, and I was part of the anti-apartheid movement. And the Israelis were supplying the Afrikaners with the apartheid government with weaponry to fight black people. So that's how I came to
Mm-hmm.
this, and I was like, well, hold on, wait a minute. I mean, you guys are supposed to be on the side of of black people around the world, but you're not. You're supposed to know what it feels like to be oppressed, but obviously you don't. So they were supporting the oppressive system, right? And so I immersed myself into understanding the state of Israel itself, as well as all the shenanigans that they were putting on in the early 1980s. Well, not the early 1980s, but the mid 1980s and late 1980s. I was one of the people who was saying that Israel itself was an apartheid state.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was called an anti-Semite for that at Brandeis University, but I was like, okay, I'm an anti-Semite now, but okay. And so, but I read it early on that this was the case. I didn't start writing about it until my academic career, when I started to write about it, as well as take trips to Israel and Palestine to see for myself what was happening. And I've written about it in multiple places, like a general report, counterpunch.org, local newspapers
Mm-hmm.
in Connecticut and so forth, saying exactly what I witnessed when I was there, and what I saw was worse than Jim Crow. you
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, it was terrible,
Mm-hmm.
and when I came back, I decided that I would remain connected to my friends there and try to do something about it, you know, and so it's been a long, long, long struggle, and I've been trying to inform people about it, but it's only recently that through the long struggle of boycott, divestment, sanction movement, which the civil society of Palestine called for, West Bank, Gaza, occupied East Jerusalem. They want us to do what we did to South Africa, that is to boycott the state of Israel, and we've been trying to do that. And hopefully, it will take off even further now that we see that Zionism, which is not Judaism, but a political perspective of settler colonialism, which seeks to take land from the Palestinian people, right? And that's what they've been doing since 1948 with the establishment of the state of Israel. They basically conducted ethnic cleansing, which they're continuing doing right now. What they're trying to do in Gaza, as well as the West Bank, because we're not even talking about the West Bank, because they're bombing it and bombing hospitals in the West Bank and schools and stuff like that and refugee camps and killing people in the West Bank. But they're trying to ethnically cleanse and take the land. And the people who are in charge, the Bibi Netanyahu, as well as his far right cronies, who are basically rabid racists, who are trying to take the land from Palestine, trying to get them, push them off the land into the desert, into the Sinai, into Jordan. But Jordan and Egypt will not have that. So if they continue to persist at doing this stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a regional war that may lead to a world war.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are now. So, and what they're doing is just bombing civilians willy-nilly in violation of international law, which Israel and the United States don't seem to recognize international law. They just do what they want to do. So they're being brazen. So, but anyway, I mean, this is how I came to it, and this is what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And friends who are talking to me via Twitter as well as other social media platforms, and calling me and stuff like that, telling me what's going on the ground. So it's pretty bad, and we don't need these kinds of milquetoast like just cease fire. We need to end the blockade. We need to end the ethnic cleansing. We need to have one state that is secular and not a ethno state of Jewish supremacy. We don't need that. That's the way I see it, and I think that's the way my Palestinian colleagues and many Israelis now starting to see it.
Mm-hmm. To talk and that's so helpful for you to provide that historical perspective, Johnny, just in general, but also your personal testimony and involvement for a few decades. So where do we kind of go from here? What's your best optimistic hope, your mid-level hope, and what's and what might be your dire forecast? Because the
Okay,
season. Mm-hmm.
my best hope is that the Israelis start fighting themselves, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
they're doing right now anyway. Because Bibi Netanyahu doesn't believe that he should care about the Israeli hostages, nor do have the Israelis ever cared about the Palestinian hostages that they hold in prisons, mass incarceration of Palestinian resistance fighters in the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, in which they're doing. They're arresting in mass right now and bombing people and killing people and babies and stuff like that. Still, not just in Gaza, like I said, in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff too, that we're not talking about. So the best outcome, I think, is that we recognize that Zionism is a settler colonialist apartheid regime, and that the people in the Middle East, that is in Israel, Palestine, Israel, agreed to to form one secular state. I mean, a two-state, that ain't even plausible. The Israelis have integrated their economies as well as their electrical grids and everything into the West Bank and Gaza. So they control all of that. It has to be a one state kind of thing, a binational state. That's, I mean, that's the best I can see happening. If that doesn't happen, if these zealots, if these right-wing racist extremists continue to reign as they are, and engage in their overt ethnic cleansing, then the outcome will be more and more war, and maybe regional war. And as I said, World War II. That's the worst I can see happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, World War III, right?
But this cannot continue to go on. The killing of Palestinians willy-nilly, the apartheid in Israel itself of Palestinian citizens of Israel, it has to stop. And the world is now saying it has to stop. And that's why you see massive demonstrations in the United States, around the world, Canada, Mexico, anywhere you go now around the world, it's a pro-Palestinian march, even though they're trying to shut it down by saying that if you're anti-Zionist, then you must be anti-Semitic. Believe me, that's an old trope that the Israelis like to employ to stop people from resisting their settler colonial project. and it needs to stop.
And I want to ask about students because you're still engaged with that, and even you mentioned the protest on the streets, but there's certainly protests on almost on so many campuses, yay and nay. Uh, what just from a prior to October 6th, before October 7th happened, what do you think was there one thing that caused that incursion, if you will? I was just as you were talking, my mind went back to the books that Jimmy Carter wrote about the apartheid state. And so you have our former president really echoing much of what you just said in your opening remarks as a former president. But what do you think precipitated? Was it like the Pearl Harbor situation, or what do you think precipitated this action?
Well, this is 75 years of ethnic cleansing, apartheid, and basically just humiliating Palestinians and dehumanizing them and calling them terrorists when they're just resisting the occupation of their lands, right? And by international law, right, the occupier of land, right, has no right to self-defense. So that's why you keep hearing people talking about, oh, Israel has a right to self-defense. That is a bunch of malarkey, right? Israel has no right to self-defense when it's occupying other people's lands, right? So that's one. Two, as I said, this event precipitated in 1948. And it's continuing, this project continues even to this day, right? So it is not, repeat, it is not something that's new. Israel and Netanyahu, and the Israelis know this, the Israeli public will tell you this, if you watch Israeli news, you read their newspapers and so forth, is that Netanyahu and his right-wing cronies are responsible for this because they just kept trying to take land in the West Bank, East Jerusalem. They're evicting people from their homes and stuff for no reason at all. And these homes are owned by these people. I mean, he's just been doing it. He's been humiliating them, denying them access and stuff like that. So he was pushing this, and these right wing, like I said, racist Zionists were doing this stuff, and then they were blockading for over damn near 20 years, a blockade of Gaza, right? Which Ilan Pappé, who's an Israeli historian, said it's an open air prison, right? You hear that term, right? 2.3 million people in that little small portion of land, no bigger than the state of Delaware, and they can't go anywhere. They can't fish in the ocean. They can't. They got a naval blockade. They got a land blockade. And the Israelis decide what goes in and what goes out, right? So that's been going on the whole time, Tom. But nobody in America has been talking about that, right? And what did the people expect to happen, right? It's that if you keep doing that to people and humiliating them and dehumanizing them, like treating them like they're subhuman, what you expect them to do? They got to resist, right? They have no other choice. Who would want to live that kind of life, right? They rather fight and get the bombs dropped on them than to just to continue to exist in that way. I know I would. I mean, it's like our ancestors in slavery, right? It's like Honorable Bonton said, any place is better than here, right? Anywhere but here. Right? I think that's what Palestinians are right now, and I don't blame them. And I'm in total kind of support of what Palestine is doing. They something has to give. They can't continue to live as a people in this way, being put down by the Israelis this way in the United States and the EU.
Again, we have about 40 more minutes, so we can continue to unpack. When I enter into conversations with folks, whether it's a long-winded conversation or a brief conversation, I'd like to kind of, and you referenced this already, about if I asked them who was Ralph Bunche. Some remember, some don't. Then I say, he won the Nobel Peace Prize, and what did he win it for? In 48, trying to kind of bring some peace to the area. And then after they say, oh, I don't remember him, but I'll have to look it up. And I say, okay, what about Andy Young?
Yes.
Do you remember he was ambassador to the United Nations? And do you remember why he had to resign? Most people say no, but he made the effort to reach out. Uh, and then I've referenced, I said, okay, well, President Carter, do you know that name? And so kind of check out some of his books. So you're right, this historical continuum uh, is pretty clear. What is your take on the hostages though? I think that still is kind of people are still unclear about why the hostages had to be taken.
Well, historically, the Israelis have taken Palestinians hostage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put them in prisons and stuff, and then the PLO, which doesn't exist anymore. There's the Palestinian Authority, which basically doesn't work for the Palestinian people. It works for the Israelis in the United States. That's who pay their bill. Mahmoud Abbas, who basically is, I mean, a misleadership, as Glenn Ford and Bruce Dixon used to say at Black Agenda Report. They're not really working for the Palestinian people, so the Palestinian people resist them too. Uh, and then you have Hamas, right? And Hamas is basically something that Netanyahu, if you see his postings from when Hamas got off the ground, there was an election in the West Bank and in Gaza, and Hamas won in Gaza, and the PLO, that is the Palestinian Authority, won and the West Bank and East Jerusalem. I mean, most people forget that East Jerusalem itself is also occupied,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Right? They
mm.
think, oh, Jerusalem is all Israel. No, no, it's occupied. East Jerusalem is Palestine. But anyway, so you have these two divisions, and basically Netanyahu sought to divide and conquer between the Hamas and Palestine, right? And there was a friction that developed. The small number of Hamas people who were in the West Bank were fighting with the Palestinian Authority until the point where the Palestinian Authority basically got rid of all of them. They went to prison and stuff like that.
Mm.
But Hamas continued to reign supreme in Gaza.
Mhm.
And so again, this goes back to Netanyahu. Go back to the 1980s, 1990s, and he was basically trying to fuel this division. And now it comes back to this blowback, right?
Mhm.
It comes back because, I mean, basically he fueled that division, and Hamas sees no other alternative but to fight back right now. So that's where it comes from. And most people don't know the history of this stuff because most Americans don't fucking read. But I'm
Mhm.
sorry,
Mhm.
but
Yes.
but they don't, right? They don't read. The students in my classes don't read, right? The American people don't read. They read only uh, of the stuff that the mainstream media that is owned by the wealthy few put out there to control their point of view. All you got to do is turn the TV on, right? And watch cable news and network news, and they're gonna only give you the Israeli side, right? And most people are getting hip to that now, but the fact is that they don't know the history of stuff like that, and that's traditionally been the case. Where the Israeli point of view is always given, the Palestinian voice is not given any kind of understanding. So we demonize them, and this parallels what happens to Black Americans, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? Is that we're demonized by this media as well, and we're called criminals, and they criminalize us. But on the Palestinian side, the Israelis and the Americans also demonize the Palestinians and call them terrorists,
Mm.
right? And people who don't know they're animals, right? As this Gallant said, this general, Yoav Gallant, talked about these human animals we're fighting. I mean,
Mhm.
what do you call Israelis who do this to human beings, though? Right?
Mhm.
I mean, if you go there and you look and you see, you go, who's really the animal? Who's really uncivilized, right? And from my perspective, uh, I've been seeing Israelis treat Palestinians like they are dogs or something. I mean, it's like they don't exist. They have no empathy, no human empathy for Palestinians at
Oh,
all.
mhm. Let's take a deep breath for a second and talk about
Yeah,
sociology in this context. But I do want to then come back to this
yeah,
current crisis, which we can't diminish. And on November on this day and time, and then again I'm just consumed with what the future might be for the younger people, because again you and I we may not be in the total winter of our lives, but but we may not see as many more spring times and summers as we would like, but
Yeah, yeah,
we've
healthy
been
ones at that, right? Yeah.
healthy was we've been blessed, but I'm just preoccupied at the moment for the unborn generations and anywhere in the world, but particularly in that area. But let's talk about maybe your academic profession, which has been 30, 40 years of your involvement with this phrase called sociology and the discipline of how can we organize society and look at society and improve society from a organizational and an observational standpoint. Any thoughts in that regard? And
Yeah,
maybe you might
yeah.
want to.
Before we move off of Israel, though, let me just say this about
Well, I'm going to
uh,
come back to Israel at the end, but
yeah, I
okay.
want to talk about there's something in my head right now that I want
Okay,
to tell
great.
the
Let's get it
audience.
out. Let's get it
Yeah,
out.
that if they're noticing that at the colleges and universities, the students are protesting because the students know what's up, right?
Hmm.
And that our universities have been corporatized, and they're run like they're businesses, which they shouldn't be, right? These are public goods, right? I know most people don't want to think of it as a public good, but that's what it is. That is, the knowledge that we hone now should be spread through the rest of the world for free, right?
Hmm.
And people should go to school for free and not have to pay for it as we do in the United States. Most of the world doesn't pay for an education because they recognize it as a public good. But the students are recognizing on these campuses the presidents of these universities are not working in the interest of that public good, but in the interest of the corporate good for the
Hmm.
wealthy few. And so now you see the crackdown that was building because of the response to the effectiveness of the boycott, divestment, sanction movement. Is that putting laws out saying that you can't protest against Palestinians, say in the UK, that if you protest, if you have a pro-Palestinian protest, that means you're anti-Semitic. Uh, I hear saying that if you support Palestinians, you should be suspended because it doesn't support the colleges or universities' community values. Say at Yale, when students protested there, and the response of the president of the college and the board of trustees, at Brown University, at Brandeis University, right? And just yesterday, the Brandeis alumni, which I'm one, hundreds of us have agreed not to provide funding to Brandeis University until they reinstate Students for Justice for Palestine and
Mm,
JV, the
mm,
Jewish Voices for Peace,
mm,
as legitimate. They shouldn't be suspending any of that. That's an attempt to clamp down on people's disgust with Israeli Zionism, right? And with the United States support of that kind of Israeli Zionist behavior in settler colonialism and so forth. So there's been this kind of crackdown, and there's this division that is being fed. This divisiveness is being fed by politicians who are in their pocket of the American Israeli Political Action Pact, APAC, right? And people are going to them and saying, ceasefire now. Though we need more than just a ceasefire, we need this stuff to stop, period. Settler colonial project needs to stop, right? End the blockade, everything, right? So the students are recognizing this. Faculty are afraid to talk,
mm, mm,
right? Because they think, and even when they have tenure, which blows me away, that if they remain silent, that somehow they're not going to be affected by it. Right?
mhm,
But their silence is complicity, and they will kill you anyway and tell you that you resisted, right? That you liked it when they killed you, according to
mm.
Zordner Hurston, right? So, the faculty needs to speak up and support the students and what they're doing, because the students, who are the future, as you said, right? They need our support, right? And what kind of essentially the United States is trying to do is give faculty to form, and I think it's a good idea that we form faculty for justice in Palestine groups, so we
Mm.
can be in conjunction and supportive of our students. We have academic freedom. Our students do too. They also have free speech, and they shouldn't be penalized for that, especially when there's some immoral, corrupt, inhuman stuff going on, and that they're protesting against, say, in Israel and Palestine.
I'm,
Okay,
I'm yeah,
so
no,
so
no,
with
no,
that,
no,
now
well,
I will switch to
well,
your
well, I'm going to
sociology.
argue with no,
Yeah.
no. Let's stay on this theme. Just stay
Okay.
on this for a second, because I'm so glad you, so glad you lifted that up. We've been in that same discussion that you just mentioned, that a number of Jewish benefactors have withdrawn their money from universities. Comment on that.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about a faithful few, wealthy few Zionist uh, Jews, right? who are saying that they're speaking for the whole Jewish community, which they're not, right? I mean, most people don't know that I myself am married to a Jewish person,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife, so she's Jewish, and my kids are Jewish too, and they attended Jewish day schools and stuff like that. So it's not Jews as a collective that is saying that we're going to withdraw our money. It is these wealthy Zionists who claim to speak for the Jewish community, and the Jewish community is responding back that you do not speak for us and not in our name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the United States. Uh, they have lost the narrative that they've been spoting for a long time. That if they've been espousing this narrative that Zionism is Judaism, most Jews in the United States don't accept that anymore, right?
Mm.
And, there are some, right? You have some that show up for the rally for Israel, right, which was a paid event. They were actually paying students $250 to attend. That's how they had to muster up support. And then they inflated the numbers at their little Monday rally to say that it was 290,000 people when anybody who could look and see on the mall that it was way less than that. It may have been 100,000 people, but it definitely wasn't 290,000,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to take back control of the narrative, which they have lost, which I don't think it's not possible now, given what they have done in the past 40 something days to the Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank and Eastern.
And so let's just stay on you mentioned the anti-apartheid movement and obviously the civil rights movement in Kent State and uh, Orangeburg. I think it was Orangeburg. We had the Kent State kind of killing that around that same time. You had a black college, and then you had obviously the Vietnam protests and the free speech movement, Colombia and elsewhere. And then we fast forward now to today. So what does that say about students really taking ownership of their dedication, passion, and beliefs?
It's particularly Generation Z, Gen Z, the TikTok generation, uh, who are resisting these narratives, which gives me hope
Mm-hmm.
that all of these wars and our wartime economy, which was still on from World War II, where we make money off of weapons and stuff, that this stuff will stop because students will say, these young people are going to say, no, we don't want to live like this anymore. We don't want to destroy the planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taking us to the climate change level that we are. They make the connections between climate change and wars and weapon manufacturing and capitalism. They're making those connections and saying no more, right? And they're the up and coming generation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should be hopeful, right? And I'm pretty optimistic about that, right?
Good.
Despite what's going on in Israel and Palestine, uh, I think that young people, and I know that they have lost young Jews already,
Mm.
right? They're very concerned about that, right? Especially ADL, which masks itself as a civil rights movement. I mean, a civil rights organization when it's actually a Zionist, racist organization in support of the settler colonial project in Israel. So, so young people, especially young Jews, are just, we ain't having it no more.
Mm.
So I like it. So I think it's a very helpful, hopeful and a helpful way in which they are operating. And the people who want to be Zionists are very concerned about it.
Let's move into sociology, and let me throw maybe if not a curveball or a forkball, or hopefully it could be not even a fastball, but I know you're on your feet. But if I find the secret to life and send it to you so that you can teach still at Trinity for 30 years from now, how would you approach teaching sociology, or will we really even have these artificial distinctions among disciplines? But how would you teach sociology, or how would you teach just becoming a better human in college between 18 and 21?
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm going to stay on point because I get lost sometimes when I
All
start
right.
talking. But
Okay.
but first of all, sociology isn't the end all be all life saving. Right? Right?
Mm.
Sociology itself is a project of the Enlightenment in Europe, right? And the Enlightenment itself was highly connected to imperialism and colonialism,
Mm.
right? And so sociology, the way it got legitimacy was to support the differentiating of human beings so that they can be exploited. That is, sociology sought to legitimate race,
Mm.
right? Which is still doing, right? Which I'm highly critical of because there are many of my colleagues who use the language that they use, the discourse that they use, and so forth, in the studies that they engage in, do nothing to get rid of the scourge of white supremacy and systemic racism, which is the same thing, right? So there's only a faithful few sociologists in the United States and Canada and Mexico who actually seek to overturn the existing system and replace it with one that is more human centered,
Mm.
like rather than material accumulation centered. There's not that many, right? And so I'm highly critical of that. And my goal has always been to provide students with a conceptual frame, right? A sociological conceptual frame uh, for how to transform the world into one that is human centered,
Mm.
right, rather than material centered. That is the accumulation of things, more and more stuff. I mean, we don't need all this stuff, right? It's destroying us as a species, not the planet. The planet will be here, but we will be gone because we can't
Mm.
live and breathe on the planet anymore. But that's the thing I'm hopeful for. But sociology itself needs to be actually, from my perspective, totally revamped, totally restructured, and
Mm.
not operate the way in which it operates now.
And
And
there's a progressive group that you're affiliated with, I believe, that's more progressive oriented. Am I correct? There's a group of sociologists.
you're talking about all organizations have their problems, but this is the imperfect. That's just the imperfection of them all, right? But uh, I'm in the Association for Humanist Sociology,
Yeah.
and at least we try, right?
Hmm.
And it's not just reserved for sociologists, but also for activists,
Mm.
right? And just everyday people to come in and work together. It's more, and what it needs to become more of is collaborative with everyday people,
Okay.
right? Uh, because the sociology that I see is a collaborative one. Sociologists are not the vessels of knowledge per se. That's the that's the venue of everyday people, right?
Hmm.
Everyday people are very smart too, right?
Hmm.
And they're intellectuals, right? They just don't have a degree. They don't have these credentials that these PhDs, MAs, and all this other stuff. But they know how to experience and live life and transform this planet to make it a better place, right? So we need to work with them. So that's the kind of sociology that I seek, and the Association for Humanist Sociology is trying to get there. It ain't there yet. Uh, and I'm highly critical of this concept of humanism, which is a European one also, uh, which is the source of this kind of universalism, which is the foundation for this kind of imperialism that we're experiencing in this colonialism, neo-colonialism, and stuff that we're experiencing. So humanism can be also a suspect concept itself.
Mm.
You have
Mm.
to critique it also.
Johnny, let's take another 10 minutes as we wind down and really appreciate you taking the time to kind of chat with me. And I want to kind of leave it open-ended in terms of what might be circulating through your young brain. You continue to rejuvenate your brain cells. But my mind comes to you might want to talk about the 2024, the presidential election, and Cornel West is kind of in that race, or you might want to share about you mentioned the corporate universities being more of a business than a citadel of learning. I'm still intrigued with that concept. And even you mentioned your personal life, which I really appreciate your sharing. What that when you wake up and each day and each morning you're in a global family, if you will. So I'm just curious, how would you like to conclude for the next 9 or so minutes?
Well, the, the corporate university is real. It's This was a design of the people reacting to Vietnam, anti-Vietnam protests, as well as the free speech movement, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, and the gay lesbian movement, the American Indian movement, Chicana movement. They were reacting to that and saying that in these universities, there were radicals, right, in these universities that were fueling this kind of stuff, which is, it's a blatant lie. It's not true. But this was Lewis Powell, before he became Justice Powell of the Supreme Court, had a Powell memo, which he wrote about this in, right? Which then sprung into action these people, this one guy who's still alive, Charles Koch, his brother David passed away. So now they have a Koch donor network where they seek to insert professors that they want with conservative, capitalist, racist leanings, and preserve the system as it is, this oppressive system called the United States as it really is, and not to question it. And any professor who does question it should be ran out of the Academy of Higher Education, right? And they have done that, right? They tried it with me, right? And as I said, this is starting back as a response to what happened in the 50s and 60s. They're now trying to take what they did was they decided to defund the university in order so that the rich people can have control by funding it and determining who could be hired and who could go to school and stuff like that. Which what they're doing now, right? It's reaching this crescendo about who can go to school, right? School is so expensive.
And the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court decision as well.
Yeah, exactly. Citizen United, right? That decision, and then the Supreme Court decision about the affirmative action, right? And what could happen, right? Even though affirmative action was dead in the water anyway, they just went and put the nail in the coffin, right? But the thing is that what they're doing is they're trying to maintain control of discipline your mind, so that you won't think outside of the box of neoliberal capitalism and racism and sexism and stuff like that, that you will stay confined to that box. And if anybody steps outside of that box, that's a radical, right? Right? Even though they may not be a radical, they just say, hey, this is not right, right? That kind of thing, right? And so what we have now is a university, primarily, even public institutions, primarily funded by these wealthy few in their interests, right? And now they're trying to keep, because the demographics are changing rapidly. By even before 2050, the country will be a majority Black, Latino, and Asian, and Native American, right? And not white. They'll be in the minority, right? And it's already shifted in the state of California, Texas, and Florida, right? So so this is going on, and so they're responding to this to try to maintain their white dominance. And they'll do anything to do that. So that's why you get the rise of people like Trump. But you also get a white who ain't no better. You get white supremacy, Trump, or you get white supremacy light, right? That's what you get, right? They're all in maintaining this kind of white male domination of the society, white elite male domination, even though they make up only about maybe 30% of the population, but they dominate every major institution in the country, right? These folks. So that's what this is about when it comes to the corporatization of the university. And then they'll put, what's interesting about this, Tom, is that they'll put people who look like me and you in charge, but they just look like me and you. Their mental state is totally whitened. It's a whitened mental state. It's a capitalist mentality, and they will do effectively what someone who is really white and male will do for them. They're basically what in academic lingo, compradors, right? Courtiers in French, meaning that they're collaborators, right? They, you call them sellouts, you can call them Tom, whatever you want to call them, but that's what they do at these places. So just because you get diversity, don't mean that you're going to get someone with a consciousness that is a Black consciousness. One that is with the people, that sides with oppressed people and stuff like that. So you see that's how you can explain Obama, right? I know folks in the audience may say, oh, Obama, he going off. Yeah, Obama was treacherous for Black people. He did nothing for Black people. He set us back decades, right? Just look at any policy, you can see that, right? So I'm trying to get you to see how overall, right, the scheme is, no matter who's in charge, they're going to be in the interest of those wealthy few.
And that's so helpful, Johnny. We've in Your good friend, I think you call him Corn, but
Yeah.
those of us that that don't know him as well will refer him as the esteemed and venerable Professor Cornell West, who even his quest at the moment to kind of seize
Well, I think
American
Cornel West will
mind.
tell you that what he's trying to do is is bring up these issues that otherwise wouldn't be talked about. I don't. I think he has no illusions that he would ever be president, and quite frankly, who would want to be president of this beast? Right?
Hmm.
I would never want to run for president of the United States because it means that you become a presider over the oppression of the world and the people within the United States and North America,
Hmm.
right? So, but I think what he's trying to do is just get people to educate people, to get them where they need to go, to say things that people need to hear, that the paid politicians, the wealthy few's benefactors, right, who benefit these people, they need to, you know, listen to what he says and stop and pay attention to the people. They're not representing the people, right? And they have never done that throughout U.S. history. And so the system needs to be radically restructured, as Martin Luther King said.
Hmm.
It is
Hmm.
a violent political, economic, cultural system in the United States that needs to be, we need a radical transformation of values, radical transformation of the economic and political systems. This is the only way we can save humanity and ourselves, right?
Hmm.
And I think Cohen is on that line. Uh, would I vote for Cohen? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do that. Yeah, but traditionally, what I do is I just vote for these nuts and ovaries. It's like, that's been my thing. I mean, I just write in because I know what's up. Most of these people are not going to work for the everyday folks, right? But I think Cornell will. So, I'll vote for him. If he gets somewhere, it'd be great. But I highly doubt that he will.
Let's as we wind down, Johnny, and I'm laughing out of admiration and respect, and I haven't lifted up the people trying to, the word pillory comes to mind, or even crucify you 8 9 years ago, and so it's just so remarkable and pleased to see that was just part of your journey, and that you lived and learned, and you're somewhat even thriving because of going through walking over those hot coals and people throwing the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune at you. And I'll leave people to kind of Google what I mean by that themselves. Uh, but but talk to me a little bit about, as we kind of conclude. There are, you mentioned the need for life as a learning opportunity, and whether you're in college or not, or in your, that learning is ongoing. What kind of books or articles or Al Jazeera, what would you recommend for folks to kind of help them with their own personal evolution and consciousness? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a book that's part of your syllabus, although that's fine too. But I'm just curious about
Well,
some things that people might want to, I guess, pick up on, and just to help with their own self edification.
well, I think, when I was young, I mean, the most important book uh, that I read that transformed me to think differently about the world was the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I know it's Alex Haley left out a lot of stuff, but and framed it the way he wanted to. But it was a very influential book for me. So that's one. And then the second book is Pedagogy of the Oppressed
Mm-hmm.
by Paulo Freire,
Mm-hmm.
Freire, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Freire, you can call him that way. I mean, he's Brazilian, but he's passed on in the education pedagogy of the oppressed. And then Frantz Fanon, Wretch of the Earth, uh, is a very important book to read, to get to know and to understand, right? And then uh, there's books by uh, my heroes, uh, uh,
Sure.
Cabral, Amilcar Cabral,
Mm-hmm.
Return to the Source, very thin book, uh, talking about colonialism and what's happening to African people around the world in the diaspora. Uh, then there is uh, a book by Aeneas Assar, Discourse on Colonialism,
Mm-hmm.
which was also pivotal for me, and moving my thoughts forward and understanding, which I still use his book. I used his book this semester. I also used The Wretch of the Earth, as well
Mm-hmm.
as Black Skin, White Mask by Fanon.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is uh, just the speeches and the writings uh, of Cabral, as well as Patrice Lumumba
Mm-hmm.
in the Congo. in Africa, which were helping me to think in internationalist terms
Yes.
instead of just domestically, because what's local is also national as well as international.
Mm.
As we see with during the George Floyd situation, and where they were police who had been trained in Israel. They trained with the Israeli police and learned the techniques that they used to suppress Palestinians. That the Palestinians were helping us to combat the weaponry which were being deployed against us and how to be successful.
Mm.
To recognize that this is an international thing. This is a global oppression system that we're operating with. As Patricia Hill Collins called it, a matrix of domination.
Mm.
And so we need to be very much aware that we are not alone and that we should be in solidarity with oppressed people all around the world. And then I'll give one last book that was also very critical, Black Liberation Theology by James Cone.
Mm-hmm.
Because I grew up in a very religious family, though I'm not a very religious person at all, but my wife and kids are, but I'm not. And my family is my mom,
Mm-hmm.
and my brothers and stuff. But I found James Cone's book to be very, very helpful for me to understand religiously what's happening and what we should always side with the oppressed. Always side with the oppressed. And that's the position that I take throughout my life, is that the oppressed are never wrong. Something is being done to them. And to learn that there are laws, but laws are not morality.
Mm.
They are unjust laws,
Mm.
right? And right now, what we're seeing in the United States, with them trying to say that, if you speak out for Palestine, that you're anti-Semitic, that is an unjust law.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it should be violated at all costs,
Mm.
continuously, right? And so I would tell people to stop with those things and read them, and hopefully, live a fruitful life and enjoy other people and have relationship with people, not just things.
Mm.
Right?
Mm. Mm.
That's it.
Mm. Johnny, let's conclude. Let's conclude on that note. I mean, I want to conclude on that note and give people a chance to digest really this total conversation, but particularly your closing comments. I guess want to thank you for sharing that really heartfelt communion that's so important this day and age and in the future.
Thank you.
Johnny, thanks so much, man. See you soon.
All right, brother.
See you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.